Hey y'all, my name is Sarah, and today I want to talk about something more personal. I am so uncomfortable right now, but I know that I need to do this. We're going to talk about money, and in particular, we're going to talk about my money. So my goal is to be debt-free like everybody else here on YouTube. I want to be totally debt-free. I want any income to be mine to do with as I need to in the end create a nice emergency fund, to put more towards retirement, to set money aside for trips because I would absolutely love to see my family, and of course to build up my movie collection. Yeah, so I'm in the same situation that a lot of people are in, where your credit card debt and your student loan debt and the everyday costs of living, take up most, if not all, of your income. And the only way for you to get that flexibility within your finances back is to make extreme progress on paying off your debts as soon as possible so that you'll have more money in your pocket. I do not talk about my money situation with anyone. Nobody knows my situation. And I've noticed that a lot of people more now are sharing their personal finance situation, including a lot of YouTubers. They're sharing like, hey, I went through this rough patch, or I'm trying to get out of credit card debt, or pay off my student loans, or I'm saving up to buy a house, or I've bought a house and these were all of the unexpected expenses of having a home. So the first thing I've realized with the help of my therapist is that you cannot make progress alone, that you need the support of your friends, your family, your community. You need support in order to maintain your motivation, to have other perspectives that recognize wins when you can't see them, because there will be times where you run out of the energy, you run out of the motivation, you don't see the point and keep going, especially when those changes involve a lot of sacrifices and a lot of cutting back on things, or not being able to participate the way that you used to be able to. This is not a how-to video. I just want to say that up front. This is not a how-to video. This is not it wasn't that hard to make those financial changes that I needed to improve my situation, and all you need is this app or this product or this service and you'll be fine. I made strategic choices that prioritize paying back my debts, and specifically credit card debt. As of January 2025, total debt for the beginning of the year is around, because it changes every day, $42,997 compared to January 2024 at the beginning of the year, which was a little bit harder to do because I had multiple credit cards with balances at that time. All debts, including student loan debt, added up to around $57,500. This video is not just for you all who may be struggling with credit card debt or student loan debt and just want to know that there are other people out there that are making the necessary sacrifices and it sucks. But also for me, because this is a way for me to recognize a win. Because getting your financial, whatever you're doing, in order, building up retirement, saving for a down payment on a house, whatever it is a day-to-day decision that you're making. You're prioritizing that in order to get there in a way that is sustainable and is feasible for you in your situation. So on paper, so far, I've paid off about $14,503 without gaining more debt. But let me tell you all, there's a lot of things behind the scenes. I would never just rush out and say, I paid off $14,000 off my debt within a year. It is not that simple, not at all. We could start with what got me into debt. So the beginning of 2020, I was actually living in Tennessee, but I was visiting my family for the holidays in Virginia. So I was in another state. If y'all remember, there were travel bans and stuff for a long time, bans that went up, bans that went down. So I was unemployed for about 8 months from the beginning of that year. Luckily, I was staying with family and they were very understanding and, didn't want me out there because we just didn't know what was going on at the time. I was staying with them. I didn't have to pay rent or utilities. But in the meantime, everything else but rent and utilities is what I was paying for out of pocket. So I started to build up a bit of credit card debt towards the end of 2020. So during COVID, I did not collect unemployment and I did not collect, COVID unemployment checks. I think the only thing that I got was a stimulus check a couple years later, and that was only for a couple $100s. So I wasn't out here cashing $6,000 checks or anything. When I got a job in Indiana, of course, moving costs, first and last month's rent, plus the security deposit. So I was working at paying all of that back, and I was making pretty good progress until I was in a car accident the next year. The car accident totaled my car and I was left with a physical injury. I started going to a chiropractor that was recommended to me by my insurance company. That whole thing turned out to be a scam. I ended up having to get an attorney. My rent was like $685 and it went up to $950, and I couldn't afford the increase. I ended up having to move. During that time, I also got a car way above what I should have gotten, but my intentions were not to keep it. I was gonna sell it as soon as I could. When I got the settlement from my car accident, it was only about $7,000. And by that time, I had more medical expenses and I had moved out of my apartment into a much, much less expensive place, which was about like a third of the price because it was, very remote and it was in a really small town in Indiana, and I was commuting. And I was commuting about 4 to 6 hours a day. It was not great. Even though my car got extremely good gas mileage and it was cost effective, I started to have some physical side effects of being sitting for that long and driving the roads that I was driving on, which were not great. I had a combination of issues with my spine, and as a result, sitting and basically being on a bumpy road for hours at a time was messing with my alignment, I'll say, my spinal alignment. And it was causing muscle spasms at work. And if you've ever experienced a muscle spasm, it feels like you're being electrocuted and punched at the same time. And you're kind of frozen while it's happening. So I told my supervisor that I was having all of these like physical symptoms, and was there any way that they could make accommodations for me? No, they couldn't. I was like, okay, are there any other positions available that might be less like physically demanding? No, there weren't. Are there any other positions available at any of the neighboring stores? No, there weren't. Sorry, y'all, my phone died. So I'm gonna set you guys up here. Okay, so I hope you guys can hear me all right. I know the quality is not great, but while my phone is charging, I just want to get this out because this is not a comfortable conversation for me, and I just want to get it all out. It was made very difficult for me to find another position at another store. The procedures for how to do that kept changing and were really time consuming. In the end, I couldn't find another position, and my symptoms meanwhile were getting worse and worse because I'm commuting all these hours every single day. I wasn't showing up late. I wasn't calling out. I just was having a hard time and was looking for some support, and I wasn't able to get it there. So I ended up quitting my job and trying to find something closer to where I lived at the time. And the only jobs that were available were very physical jobs, and I physically couldn't carry certain weights. So that was kind of a bummer, but I was sure that I would get something soon. Y'all, it wasn't soon. I started building up more credit card debt. I ended up selling my car. I developed a very strict budget, mostly essentials, very little room for other types of expenses. I consolidated all of my credit card balances onto one card, and I chose the card with my credit union. And the card that I chose was one that I had just opened, that I had a 0% interest rate even on balance transfers for about 6 months. So I moved all of the balances onto this one card. Later, I got the job offer out here in Philly and jumped on it. The supervisor at the time called me and was like, I see that you're located in Indiana. Will you be able to be here on the start date? Yes, I will. And I was. I rented a car. I drove out to Philadelphia. I spent a couple days here while I looked for an apartment. I found an apartment that fit into my budget at the time and was close to public transit and was close to a grocery store, which like checked all my boxes as far as like safety and stuff like that. Ended up getting a cash advance through a credit card to cover the deposit and first month's rent. And then I just prepared to move. I rented a high top cargo van and just did the drive myself from Indiana to Pennsylvania. So my first year living here was not as strict of a budget because the priority was for me to get comfortable with the city, to get comfortable in my new neighborhood, to find, familiar routines for like getting groceries, doing my essential tasks and stuff, getting comfortable taking the bus and those kinds of things. I didn't want to put too much pressure on myself to accommodate for too many changes too quickly until I started having problems with the property manager. And then my stress level became very high because I was in a position where I didn't feel safe in my apartment. And if I'd had like an emergency fund, if I had savings saved, then I could have moved myself out of the situation without worrying about how much it cost. I stayed there through the end of my lease, made sure that the apartment was in better condition than when I moved in there. I got my full deposit back. And that is when I started making those very strategic moves. Because I was having such a hard time with the property manager early on, I was step by step already planning how I was going to get myself out of this situation. Over the past year, even though I hadn't prioritized addressing my finances, I was making the behavioral changes for being on a strict budget. So when the next year came around, I was able to put those actions into place pretty seamlessly. Another choice that I made was to move into a nice studio in a bad neighborhood. Guys, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. It was about $250 less than what I was paying at my old place, and it was a 3-month rent-free promotion on a 16-month lease. So 3 months rent-free, are you kidding me? For someone like me who was prioritizing getting out of this credit card debt, that was a great opportunity for me to see some serious change in my balance. Plus the deposit was also very low. It was only $500. So once I got my deposit back from my old apartment, I used that to pay off one credit card in full. That left me with only one credit card with a balance. I also found out my first year with my company that they had a student repayment program, and that depending on what job that you had and how much debt you have, that you can get a pretty large chunk paid off every year that you agree to be a part of the company. So I did. I went ahead and signed up for the program. I saw the first payment apply, and it was about $8,000. Also, every single year I file my taxes, and every year I get a very small tax return, and I throw that entire amount at this debt. Twice a year, I have 3 paycheck months, and an entire paycheck goes towards this debt. I always make my payments on time, every time. Even if that means that we're balancing on very little from paycheck to paycheck, still make the payments on time. People tend to focus on the things they want during the debt payoff process. This is what it really means to prioritize paying off debt and avoid building it back up. Now, what this also means is because I'm throwing so much money at this debt all at once, I have very little as an emergency fund. I'm contributing very little towards retirement, and it also means that I cannot provide financial support to my friends and family. So this is a long, tiring, annoying process. It sucks. Every time somebody asks you, what are you doing for the holidays? Nothing. When are you going on vacation? You look really stressed. In 2 years. That's when I've estimated that I'll be totally debt free. Have you thought about getting a pet? Because you are really intense when I pay off my credit card. Like, don't ask me. Don't ask me what my plans are. Don't ask me what I'm doing. Don't ask me, It could be a whole thing, especially if you don't have great balancing skills or tendencies. Something that helps is stuff like personal finance podcasts or YouTube channels. Like, I really enjoy the Brown Ambition podcast. I've been listening to them for years. They're hosted by Mandy and Tiffany, who's also known as the Budgetnista. She's got I think a show on Netflix now. I would also recommend Caleb Hammer's YouTube channel. I know them thumbnails look wild, but that's just clickbait. He does talk to a lot of, I would say, regular people, mid-salary people. Occasionally there's a guest that makes over, I'd say $75,000, $100,000. And those conversations are interesting to listen to. Someone who makes $100,000 a year can be in the same exact financial situation as you, which is wild to me to learn. I'm like, oh, if you make that much money, then you must be good. No, sweet baby angel. No, they're not good. Someone can have so much credit card debt and student loan debt that their salary leaves them after essentials are paid the exact same money that you have per pay period. After you've made all your minimum payments towards your debt or whatever your payment situations are, plus your essentials. That was really eye-opening to me to realize that it's not a salary thing. It has nothing to do with your salary. It has to do with your habits, your behavior, and ideas that you have around money. So a couple of my favorite creatives have also shared their financial situation, like what their income is, how they create more income, how much they make on YouTube, how much they make on other platforms from products or services. And I really appreciate that because there is a misconception about how well off people are on YouTube. Sharing I'm out here hustling every day. I have all of these different ventures. I provide all of these different services and products. Is very important because it really drives home the idea that none of this happens overnight. Nobody's an overnight sensation, that work goes into it to maintain this, especially as a creative when you're basically a freelancer or you're basically a small business and you're working for yourself. It matters. So I recommend Halise. She's a director, photographer here on the platform. She shared the different ways that she makes money. She shares a little bit about her debt situation, specifically in regards to student loan debt, because she did go to school for filmmaking. Another one, Asia Dang, who is to me more of a classic YouTuber, who went the beauty route, who went the lifestyle route, and her journey really started focusing on her finances a few years ago. So now she's a content creator. She's a small business owner. She sells planners as a product, and she's a YouTuber. So she has multiple ways that she makes money and has systems for each one of those things. Her goal at first was to be debt free, was to pay off her student loan debt and all of her credit card debt, to focus on improving her budgeting, and then later on investing. She was really thorough and really transparent about how that process was going. And now I think she's a little less so because she's already reached certain milestones and her audience is in a different place than she is. So most of her audience, and this is, coming from a couple of videos where she's mentioned it. So I would go back and check out her, how she's getting out of debt, the jobs that she's took. Some of her difficulties as a content creator getting paid was definitely eye-opening to me. If you really want to go into it, if you're really feeling brave and, you're willing to have the bubbly guts like I did when I first address my total number as far as all of my debts, consider bankruptcy. Only because my debt to income ratio is way out of line for me, even though I didn't spend over $100,000. And that's typically, especially for consumer debt, which is like credit card debt or debt from medical expenses. I just didn't see a way out for me, and especially like my debt to income ratio. So I considered bankruptcy and did a bunch of research into what that would entail, what it would cost, how to do it, all those things. And I would contact a debt consolidation service. I would go with the most reputable company, not the one that is gonna make you the biggest promises, but the one that is the most consistent, has the best reviews, and has been around for a while. Okay, I can't tell you what that service is. I can tell you I looked into a couple of them and they were really helpful. And they did agree that because of my debt to income ratio, that bankruptcy was an option, but it takes a really long time and it costs quite a bit out of pocket. I found out that I had a benefit through my job that would allow me to talk to different legal professionals, including a bankruptcy attorney. I got a bit more in-depth information about what it would entail to file for bankruptcy, how that would impact my credit, for how long, and on and on. It is not an easy decision to make. But if you just are in the information gathering mode, those are a few things that you could do. And there are free resources available locally. I always recommend, go to your local library and just ask around, because librarians are tapped into whatever free programs are available in the area. They're a great resource. Also, review your employee benefits, because there may be some weird benefit that lets you talk to different types of legal professionals for free. I would check into those as well, because I found one through my job and he was really helpful. Again, this process is annoying and tiring, and I think I do have some shame around it, which is why it's not easy for me to talk about. But I hope this video finds whoever it needs to find, and that some of y'all find it helpful or comforting. I mean, there's no way to predict COVID happening, but a car accident, medical emergencies, your rent going up, you're just running out of options. It happens to everybody. Letting the people in your life know that, okay, now I know where you really are. If they truly care about you, they will understand and be willing to okay, how can I help, in terms of how can I be there for you during this time, because I know that it's going to take a long time, it's going to be really tiring, and it sucks. So how can I be there for you makes all the difference. It makes all the difference. By the end of the year, because I don't want to say 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, that's silly, but by the end of the year, I'm hoping that my overall credit card debt will be under $10,000. For that freaking balance to be $9,999.99. That is my goal for the end of the year. And I hope that by sharing this, it'll normalize these conversations around money, because let me tell you, the way I grew up, it was such a weird environment to talk about money. Because like many of you all, I grew up, we didn't have it. That was a common thing you hear. We just don't have it. That is such a limiting way to view your circumstances. I want y'all to know that it's okay if you don't have it, but there are ways to work within those limitations. I think if we are able to share resources like people do all the time here on YouTube, that it makes the process a lot easier. It makes people feel less like they're alone, pushing that boulder up the hill, and that we can actually get there. We can make it. We can meet these financial goals that we have for ourselves. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm staying at home during this cold snap. So thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time.